The night hung heavy over Alabama, its inky blackness devouring everything in its path. The only source of light was the flickering beams of my car's headlights as they cut through the darkness. I was on an abandoned gravel road, one that I had never seen on any map, and I had no idea how I had ended up there. The road stretched out before me like a sinister ribbon, winding through the dense forest. The trees leaned in, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, grasping for something that remained just out of reach. My heart pounded in my chest as I drove deeper into the unknown, the gravel crunching beneath my tires like a macabre lullaby. A sense of unease settled over me, a feeling that I was not alone on this desolate road. I glanced in my rearview mirror, half expecting to see a pair of glowing eyes staring back at me, but there was nothing there. Just the endless darkness, swallowing everything in its path. I had been driving for what felt like hours, but there was no sign of civilization, no hint of another living soul. The road seemed to stretch on forever, and I began to wonder if I had entered some kind of twisted twilight zone. As I continued to drive, a strange sensation washed over me, as if the air itself had grown heavier. The temperature inside the car dropped, and my breath formed misty clouds in front of me. I reached for the heater controls, but they were ice cold to the touch. It was then that I noticed the frost creeping up the edges of the windshield. Panic gnawed at the edges of my mind as I realized that I was trapped in this frozen nightmare. I couldn't turn back. I didn't even know where I had come from. The only option was to keep driving forward, no matter how terrifying the road ahead. The gravel road eventually led me to a clearing, and what I saw there made my blood run cold. In the center of the clearing stood a dilapidated, long-abandoned church. Its steeple reached for the sky like a bony finger, and the windows were shattered, their glass shards glinting in the pale moonlight. I had no choice but to stop the car and investigate. The gravel crunched beneath my feet as I approached the church, my footsteps echoing eerily in the silence. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a mournful, otherworldly sound. As I entered the church, the air inside was even colder than outside, and a sense of foreboding washed over me. The pews were broken and overturned, and the altar was covered in a thick layer of dust. The walls were adorned with faded, tattooed paintings of saints, their eyes seeming to follow my every move. In the dim light, I noticed a flickering candle on the altar. It danced in the frigid breeze, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The flame seemed to be beckoning me, drawing me closer. I reached out to extinguish it, but as my hand neared the flame, it grew brighter and hotter, causing me to pull back in pain. The candle continued to burn with an unnatural intensity, its light filling the church and revealing something I had not noticed before. A trapdoor beneath the altar. I hesitated for a moment, then with trembling hands, I lifted the heavy wooden door. Beneath the trapdoor was a narrow staircase that descended into darkness. I knew I shouldn't go down there, that it was a terrible idea, but something compelled me forward, some unseen force that I couldn't resist. The stairs seemed to go on forever, and with each step, the air grew colder and the darkness more suffocating. It felt as though I were descending into the very bowels of hell itself. Finally, I reached the bottom, and what I saw there will haunt me for the rest of my days. The chamber was filled with flickering candles, casting a sickly yellow light on the walls. In the center of the room lay a stone altar, and on that altar rested a grotesque, writhing mass of flesh. I stumbled back in horror as the mass unfurled, revealing itself to be a grotesque, monstrous creature. Its eyes were empty voids, and its limbs were twisted and deformed. It reached out toward me with gnarled, bony fingers, and I knew that it hungered for something that I couldn't comprehend. I turned and fled, scrambling up the stairs and out of the church, the creature's unearthly wails echoing in my ears. I raced back to my car and peeled out of the clearing, leaving the nightmarish scene behind me. I drove for what felt like an eternity, the gravel road seemingly endless. Finally, just as the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon, I found myself back on a familiar highway, the gravel road nowhere to be seen. I had escaped the nightmare, but I couldn't escape the haunting image of that creature on the stone altar. It would forever be etched into my mind, a reminder of the horrors that can lurk in the darkest corners of Alabama's forgotten roads.